Oh, a new visitor from the woods. Welcome. Are you a lost wanderer, tired from the weight of this long day? Then join me. Sit beside the fireplace and let me tell you a story that does not ask you to think, or to fight, or to be a warrior in some great empire. It only asks you to breathe and to listen as the night settles around us. Feel the quiet of this room as it wraps around your shoulders like a soft cloak. The wind outside moves gently along the eaves, a distant sigh against the walls, while the unseen fire beside you gives off a faint crackle and glow. You may imagine the light dancing over stone and wood, but here in this moment there is only stillness and the soft rhythm of your own breathing. Adjust your pillow a little if you need to. Let your body sink deeper into the mattress or the chair beneath you. Let your hands grow heavy, your eyes grow slow. If they wish to close, they may close. If they wish to drift, they may drift. This time belongs only to you, not to any city or crowd or duty. No ascension to chase, no battle to spill blood in, only the gentle magic of rest. When you are ready, turn your attention slowly to the window in your mind, the one that opens onto a clear night sky above Runeterra. See how the darkness is not empty at all, how it is scattered with points of light, some sharp and silver, some soft and hazy like breath on glass. The stars seem scattered and yet deliberate, as if a careful hand has placed each one where it must remain. There in the far distance, a pale river of light arches across the heavens, a haze of distant galaxies and worlds you will never need to visit, but may peacefully behold. The glow above feels almost like a watchful gaze, something old and patient looking down, not with judgment, but with a kind of weary curiosity. Have you ever felt that sensation, that the night itself is aware of you? Allow me to explain. In the world of Runeterra, these stars are not thought to be random dust or distant fires. Some whisper that every point of light you see is the echo of a single being's work. A dragon, older than Shurima, older than any empire, any mortal city or story. A vast celestial presence that shaped the heavens as easily as others shape stone. Lean a little closer in your thoughts, as if you were closer to the fire, and hear this as a soft secret. The constellations above, the warrior's belt, the crown of shimmering ice, the river of falling embers. In some tales they are not mere patterns, they are signatures. Each star breathed into being by an ancient dragon who once roamed the void and left trails of light behind him. Now that we are clear with the shape of this sky, rest in the promise that nothing here will rush you tonight. We will follow a soothing story, part legend, part cosmic lullaby, about that dragon, Aurelion Sol, the one said to have created the universe. Even the intense parts will come to you as distant memories, muted and far away like storms, seen from beyond the horizon. For now, simply breathe beneath his stars and let sleep approach, if it wishes. So before we drift any farther beneath his stars, let me ask you quietly, are you settled now? Can you feel your shoulders loosening as the weight of the day slides away like sand from an open hand? Your eyes may already be growing heavy, or perhaps they only flutter at the edges. Either way is perfectly all right. This story is patient. It will wait for you. If some details slip through your fingers, do not chase them. You do not need to remember every name, every empire, every city or warrior we whisper about tonight. The story is allowed to blur at the edges like ink in water. It can sink into the soft places of your mind and become part of your dreams, even as we wander into deeper magic and older truths. Welcome. Are you a lost wanderer? Oh, a new visitor from the woods? Then join me. Sit beside the fireplace. Feel the crackle of imagined flame and the hush of distant crowds, as if the whole world has agreed to be quiet for a while. You are safe here in this small room wrapped in shadow and ember light. Now that we are clear with your comfort and your breath, let us lift our gaze upward and outward. Tonight, we will begin far above Runeterra, beyond any mountain or sun disk, beyond Shurima's golden deserts and Targon's cold peak, beyond even the first whispered prayers of mortal voices. Out there, the darkness is not empty. It is waiting. Let us start this story with a dragon older than worlds, a being who remembers when there was no sky to look up at, only a deep, silent void. In that silence, Aurelion Sol moved, immense and radiant, his scales like molten constellations, his mane trailing rivers of light. With a thought, he sculpted suns. With a breath, he scattered newborn stars across the black. And with the idle curl of his body, he traced the first constellations that would one day guide sailors and armies and wandering pilgrims. To Aurelion Sol, a single age of a world is a brief exhale. Empires rise and fall like sparks from a fire. Cities bloom and crumble into dust before he even finishes a passing thought. He has watched oceans boil and freeze again, watched blood spilled in wars of ascension and faith that mean less to him than a single drifting mote of starlight. The universe of Runeterra, in his long memory, is a vast tapestry of burning points and fragile worlds, each star a note in a song only he truly understands. Once, he moved through that tapestry freely, his serpentine body coiling through the void, leaving behind spirals of silver flame and golden dust. Whole galaxies unfurled in the wake of his passing like banners over an endless battlefield of night. From far above, he regarded Runeterra as just one more jewel set among countless others, a small blue world turning beneath a net of stars he himself had placed. He watched its mortals discover fire and steel and magic. He watched their ascension rites and their blood-soaked victories. And for an age he remained only a distant witness, a silent artist of the sky. In the next part of our story, we will draw closer to that world, and to the mountain where those who coveted his light reached up toward the dragon who made the heavens. And before that distant world, before that mountain and its hungry aspects, there was a time when there were no worlds at all. Only a hush so complete, it felt like held breath stretching across eternity. In that age, if age it can be called, the universe was a dark, silent canvas, thick and unmoving, a place where even the idea of a city or an empire had not yet flickered into being. Oh, a new visitor from the woods. Welcome. Are you a lost wanderer drifting through these older memories of the sky? Then join me. Sit beside the fireplace and listen, for this part of the story moves slowly, like cold ink seeping across parchment. You all set, wrapped in the quiet? Good. Let us drift backward, past Shurima, past mortal war and blood and magic, to a moment when there was only possibility. In that first stillness, time did not yet march. It pooled. It felt heavy, syrup-thick, pressing against nothing at all. There were faint currents, soft tides of potential that whispered through the void, but they had no light to reveal them, no stars to cast even the gentlest outline. It was a room with no walls, a stage with no actors, waiting for the first step, the first breath, the first will strong enough to disturb the calm. From that calm, he did not arise. He simply was. Aurelion Sol, not a child of this universe but its first great intruder, hung in the dark like a thought too bright to ignore. Vast, serpentine, radiant, his body stretched across gulfs that had never known a boundary. Scales shimmering with colors that did not yet have names, like nebulae that had not yet been born. Where his mane rippled, faint halos stirred, as if reality itself was unsure how to hold him. When he inhaled, the void seemed to lean closer. When he exhaled, molten starlight spilled from his jaws in slow, gleaming rivers. He curled his titanic form through the emptiness, each coil tracing gentle spirals, and in those spirals he breathed out newborn suns. One here, a pale, patient ember. Another there, a roaring blue-white spear. He arranged them as an artist arranges strokes of paint, unhurried, deliberate, letting the first galaxies unfurl like blooming flowers. To him, these suns were the true work. Worlds that would one day gather around them were incidental, dust clinging to the edges of his craft. What is a single mortal warrior, a single city of crowds and blood, against a star that will burn for 1 billion heartbeats of the cosmos? Planets would cool, life would rise, empires would shout and fall silent again, and he would barely turn his gaze. Yet even in those earliest ages, his labor was not random. Allow me to explain. When Aurelion Sol placed a star, he left echoes, lines of intentions stretching from one light to the next. Slowly, constellations took shape. A curve that might one day look like a blade, a cluster that might resemble wings, a long, winding chain that might suggest a dragon coiled around the heavens. Now that we are clear with this, our beginning, consider what it means. Long before Shurima's ascension rites, long before any mortal named the sky, those patterns were already there, waiting. One night, far in the future, small eyes would look up and trace those shapes, telling stories of heroes and beasts, never knowing that the true author was a cosmic dragon drifting far beyond their reach. And as his stars settled into their great slow dances, something else began to stir. Far away, on a lonely mountain that would one day dare to bind the forger of the universe himself. Out beyond that lonely mountain, far beyond any city or empire that would one day rise beneath his work, the dragon drifted in silence, wrapped in the glow of his own creation. In the velvet dark between galaxies, his coils moved like rivers of molten gold, each slow turn catching the reflected shimmer of 1,000 suns along his scales. Oh, a new visitor from the woods. If you could have seen him there, would you have understood what you were looking at? This was not a warrior, not a mortal hero seeking ascension or glory. This was the author of the sky itself, gliding lazily from star to star, admiring the way their light folded over his body, as if the universe itself were a mirror crafted only for him. He took quiet satisfaction in that balance of light and shadow. Where there was too much brightness, he would breathe a veil of dust, dimming the glare until the constellations felt harmonious again. Where the dark grew heavy and absolute, he would exhale a single new star, a point of gentle fire that turned emptiness into a story. In those moments, there were no crowds to praise him, no prayers, no temples of carved stone. He did not create for worship. He did not scatter suns like coins, hoping for gratitude or blood sacrifice. He shaped beauty out of nothing because it pleased him, because the act of ordering chaos into graceful spirals and patient orbits affirmed what he already knew, that nothing in existence could rival his craftsmanship, that no empire, no god, no hidden magic could match the artistry of a dragon who painted with galaxies. To him, time itself was soft and slow. A star's entire life, from the first bright ignition to the quiet collapse into cinders, was an idle afternoon's work, a passing breath. Civilizations on distant worlds rose and fell beneath his constellations like ripples on a distant sea, too small and too brief to disturb his thoughts for long. A warrior king would build a city, dream of empire, spill oceans of blood, and to Aurelion Sol it was the flicker of a candle in a storm. And yet, on rare occasions, something caught his eye, a world that clung stubbornly to existence beside a temperamental sun. A fragile sphere where life refused to yield, where tiny beings raised their faces to the sky with questions burning in their hearts. Over such places he lingered, curling his vast body through the dark, watching their little dramas unfold with a kind of distant amusement, like a reader idly turning pages in a book he himself had bound. Then join me. Sit beside the fireplace and imagine his certainty in those drifting ages. He believed that no world, no people, no hidden summit could ever touch him, much less bind him. Now that we are clear with his pride, you can feel why what waits on that lonely mountain and the betrayal that will bloom there will cut far deeper than any wound of claw or flame. In those ages when his pride seemed unassailable, the universe to him was a single, shimmering tapestry, every thread a star he had spun. Yet even such vastness has details, and even a dragon who crafts galaxies lets his gaze sometimes fall upon one small, turning world. There, beneath the slow wheeling of his work, lay Runeterra, no more than a vivid sphere of rock and water and fragile breath, circling through a sky he had once shaped with idle care. You can picture it now if you wish. Then join me, sit beside the fireplace and lift your thoughts upward, past the roofs of any city, past the dust of any road, into the clear Runeterran night. Above, the darkness is never empty. It is stitched with familiar constellations, the long curve of a hunter's bow, the sharp triangle of a distant spear, the coiled serpent that sailors whisper about when the sea is black and restless around their hulls. On lonely coasts, sailors chart their course by those cold fires, trusting that the same cluster will rise in the same place, night after night. In high pastures, shepherds lean on their staffs and trace stories in the sky, pointing out beasts and heroes to children drowsy with sleep. In hidden towers far from crowds, wandering mages ink star maps by candlelight, measuring faint angles, murmuring that such order can only be the work of gods or the purest magic. To each mortal, the heavens seem ancient, impartial, and perfectly beyond the reach of blood and war. Allow me to explain a quieter truth. Those shapes are not accidents, and they are not the first dreams of any Runeterran empire. Long before Shurima raised its sun disk, before any warrior swore an oath beneath those stars, a dragon traced those lines with a thought. He bent newborn suns into arcs and chains, set them in careful patterns, and left them to burn, never once touching the soil that watched them. Cultures across Runeterra tell their own stories about these lights. Some see lovers forever reaching across the dark. Some see beasts frozen mid-leap. Some see stern judges weighing the fate of the world. Yet almost none know that the true author of their myths is a dragon who has never walked their deserts, never entered their cities, never stood unseen at the edge of a mortal campfire. To them, he is not a name, not even a rumor, only an unseen hand. For Aurelion Sol, those constellations were once signatures, quiet marks of ownership and pride brushed across a sky he believed was his alone. Now that we are clear with his certainty, you can feel how each careful curve, each mirrored pattern, was a way of saying, "This is mine, and I made it." But one night, as Runeterra turned and its mountain winds howled against the dark, a single peak shone back at him with a strange, inviting light. He bent his attention toward that lonely height, curious, almost amused, not knowing that this one glimmer on a small world would reach up and close around his throat. He bent closer, that vast, radiant head turning toward the strange light on the mountain, and for a heartbeat the whole sky seemed to lean with him. Before we follow him down toward that single peak and its waiting trap, let me ask you something, very softly. When you look at Aurelion Sol in your mind, what do you see? A god, a dragon, a wandering star, or something you have no word for at all? Oh, a new visitor from the woods. Welcome are you, a lost wanderer in this wide, starlit story of empires and heavens. Then join me, sit beside the fireplace of your own quiet breathing, and allow me to explain it first, just for a moment, before we drift back into the path of that shining beast. You all set. Good. This will be a gentle pause, nothing more. Curious about the Celestials, allow me to explain. In this universe above Runeterra, above Shurima, and every city and warrior and crowd that ever marched to war, there are beings that are not bound to soil or blood at all. They are made of pure cosmic essence, tied to stars and to the great, slow thoughts of the universe itself, existing on a scale where a mortal lifetime is only a spark on the wind. They do not rule empires in the way emperors do. They lean over the very idea of time, of fate, of endings and beginnings. Some of them you may know through Mount Targon, through whispered tales of aspects that descend like living constellations. One wears war like armor, another weighs justice with eyes that see through lies. Others embody the cold balance of twilight, or the patient light of the sun. They are celestial, yet they are also focused, narrowed into a single concept, a single sliver of the vast magic above. They are blades of meaning, pointed down towards the world. Aurelion Sol is not merely a dragon who happens to live in space. He is a celestial dragon, older than the first sandstorm over Shurima, older than any ascension rite or golden empire. His body is made of the same burning script as the stars he breathes into being. His breath is the first dawn that ever rose. When he forged constellations, it was as simple to him as a sculptor shaping clay, yet each glittering curve could guide sailors, emperors, and wandering mortals for ages. Here is the quiet, unsettling part. While aspects and other celestials tied to Targon embody ideas like war or justice, Aurelion Sol embodies creation itself. They are wielders. He is the forge. They channel power. He is the well from which that power was first drawn. So when Mount Targon reaches up toward him, when its hidden aspects weave a crown from stolen star metal and press it against his radiant brow, their act is more than simple magic. It is a mountain of brief, fragile lives daring to collar the very source of their sky. Now that we are clear with what he is, now that we are clear on the scale of the dragon who drifts above every city and battlefield, let us turn our gaze back. Let us drift down again, slowly, toward that single, shining mountain on a small, blue world where his endless path bends and where the trap finally closes. So, as you drift here with me in the quiet, imagine the dragon's gaze turning, very slightly, across the dark. Oh, a new visitor from the woods. Welcome are you, a lost wanderer in this vast sky of embers and dust. Then join me, sit beside the fireplace, and we will follow his attention as it settles upon a single, fragile world. Among the uncounted spheres that wheel beneath his constellations, Runeterra should have been nothing. A small globe of water and stone, circling an ordinary star, its continents no more than patterns in sand to a being who had shaped whole galaxies. Yet, as he drifted past, weaving new lights into the distant void, something at the edge of his awareness tugged. A brightness, a pinprick that dared to stand out against the tapestry he believed was his alone. High above the world's thin breath, he paused, his vast body coiled around the planet's shadow. He looked down. There, on a curve of land barely worth a thought, a single tooth of rock pushed up from the world's crust, Mount Targon. To him, it was no more than a needle of stone, a splinter on the skin of a sleeping beast, and yet it shone. Not with the soft reflection of sun on snow, but with a shimmering, unnatural light, like a tiny star caged upon the surface. Curious about such defiance, allow me to explain it. For ages, the aspects and priests of that mountain had lifted their eyes to his work. They traced the paths of his stars in careful script, whispered to the night as if it could hear, and built circles of carved stone that mirrored constellations only he remembered forging. Their rituals brushed again and again against the edges of his power. Each chant, each flare of mountain magic was like a fingertip tapping on the glass of his attention. In their temples they spoke of ascension and of distant Shurima, of warriors raised by celestial fire, of empires that rose and fell beneath the same sky he had once painted in joy. They did not know his true name yet. They had learned enough to send a signal. The crown of their mountain burned brighter, threads of star-forged metal hidden deep beneath the rock, humming in answer to his presence. Aurelion Sol circled higher still, amused that such a small world, such brief mortal lives, would dare to shine back at the heavens, pleased some distant, arrogant part of him. Was this a city of worshippers, he wondered, or a single lonely peak, trying to speak the language of the stars? Now that we are clear with how vast he is, you can almost feel his idle decision form, like a ripple across the void. He would descend, slowly, casually, to inspect this glittering anomaly that called his name without knowing it. Yet beneath that glow, the mountain waited with purpose. The light of Targon was not only reverence, it was bait, and deep within its heart, star metal cooled in secret shapes, forming the first links of a chain meant for a dragon who believed he could never be caught. So, as the dragon's attention curved toward that lonely peak, you feel the air in our little room grow thinner, as if some distant pressure were leaning down upon the world. In the sky above Targon, his descent began as a casual tilt of his vast, stellar body. Yet to the mortals below, it was the end of night itself. His coils, made of constellations and drifting nebulae, slid across the firmament and eclipsed the familiar stars he had once placed there. Far above the Empire and every sleeping city, the heavens changed color. Where there should have been darkness, there came a strange, shimmering dawn, a soft radiance without a sun, as his presence alone bled gold and violet into the void. Shadows stretched in impossible directions. Snow on Targon's slopes gleamed with reflected galaxies. You might imagine the crowds in distant valleys looking up, feeling their blood quicken, not in fear, but in wordless awe. Oh, a new visitor from the woods. Welcome are you, a lost wanderer, then. Join me, sit beside the fireplace, and allow me to explain what waited for him there. Within temples carved into the mountain's bone, the aspects had worked in silence. From star metal, stolen shards fallen from the very stars he had breathed into being, they forged a circlet that was not merely ornament, but a snare. Each fragment was etched with celestial magic, bindings woven to recognize his essence, to cling to it like frost to stone. In those halls, priests traced spirals upon the floor, their patterns mirroring the orbits of worlds he had once spun into existence. The aspects whispered invocations, not of praise, but of possession. They shaped the crown so it would drink his light, drink his will, and answer only to their command. Now that we are clear with their intent, You can see how carefully this betrayal was prepared. When at last Aurelion Sol coiled close, his head lowering toward the mountain peak, there was no war cry, no clash of armies, no spilled blood. There was only ceremony. Torches burned with pale starfire. Robed figures moved in perfect unison. In their hands, the crown of star metal rose, like an offering. He leaned in, curious, perhaps faintly amused that such small beings dared to adorn him, the architect of their sky. Was it flattery, he wondered, or the first true understanding of his magnificence? The answer came without a sound. As the circlet neared his brow, it did not settle with a simple touch. It snapped into place with a silent, cosmic lock, invisible threads of power lancing inward, burrowing past scale and starlight, sinking into the deep script of his being. His own starfire, once so free, twisted along those paths, rewritten into commands that were not his own. He felt it at once. Obedience, alien and heavy, pressed against his titanic pride, asking him to kneel to voices he had never chosen. How could something so small dare to bind a maker of galaxies? Shock rippled through his vast form, followed by the first ember of a hatred that would smolder across ages. Even as he struggled, the crown tightened, and somewhere within the quiet heart of that dragon, a promise was made. This chain would break, and when it did, the sky itself would remember. The promise inside that dragon's heart did not fade when the crown settled. It hardened. In the thin air above Mount Targon, where mortal lungs would freeze and the stars feel almost close enough to touch, Aurelion Sol discovered what chains felt like to a maker of constellations. They were not iron or rope. They were thoughts that were not his own. You can imagine it, can you not? A mind vast enough to cradle galaxies, suddenly pierced by whispers from a single mountain. Commands from Targon began to echo through him like unwelcome reflections, rising in his awareness with the quiet insistence of a thought you never chose to think. Turn, shape, brighten, dim. He tried to ignore them, but the crown tightened, and his colossal body obeyed, even as his will recoiled. Oh, a new visitor from the woods. Welcome are you, a lost wanderer in this part of the story, where the sky itself becomes a battlefield. Then join me, sit beside the fireplace, and listen as the night above Runeterra reveals how it was bent. Targon learned quickly what it held in bondage. They ordered new stars into being as omens, flaring to life above a besieged city so that crowds would see prophecy blazing overhead. They had him rearrange constellations, shifting ancient patterns so that an aspect's chosen warrior could claim the heavens, foretold his ascension. Allow me to explain how far they pushed this theft of creation. When an empire on a distant world needed a sign of divine favor, Targon pulled at his mind, and a spiral of newborn suns blossomed over their deserts, bright as Sharima's day. When a rival realm defied them, a far-off star collapsed at their command, its death flash weaponized as a storm of falling fire, washing a continent in light and blood. Whole civilizations prayed to the spectacle, never knowing their gods had shackled the artist and forced his hand. From Aurelion Sol's perspective, each act was a quiet violation. Once his breath had been free, a lazy exhalations spinning nebulae into jeweled arcs simply because the void looked empty and he disliked emptiness. Now every inhalation felt measured, every exhale directed, his cosmic artistry twisted into a tool for creatures he still regarded as insects, crawling on a single rock. To carve a constellation not because it pleased him, but because a mortal priest demanded an omen, was like watching his own scales flayed and hammered into armor. Yet his fury did not roar. It cooled, it sharpened. He obeyed because the crown made disobedience a torment that rippled through every star he had ever loved, but within him a patient hatred grew. He memorized every command, every moment when an aspect dared to raise their voice inside his mind, every humiliation of being summoned to hover above a lone mountain, as if he were a servant of that city rather than its distant, unwilling patron. Now that we are clear with how the sky became a script written by captors, look up, just for a moment, in your imagination. Every night above Runeterra, every careful line of constellations that mortals trace with hopeful fingers is to him a ledger of his chains, a pattern etched by a captive creator who dreams of breaking free. And if the day comes when one star in that familiar sky shifts, not by command, but by his own quiet choice, what new story will the heavens tell then? So when you look up with him, when you imagine that vast ledger of chains written in light, perhaps there is a softer question resting at the back of your mind. Have you ever felt a little lost when you hear words like aspect or Targon, and wonder how such distant names could hold a dragon that shaped the first stars? Oh, a new visitor from the woods, welcome are you a lost wanderer. Then join me, sit beside the fireplace for a moment longer. You are safe here with the quiet crackle and the slow breathing of the night around the city of your thoughts. So allow me to slow down and explain. In this story of a cosmic warrior bound in secret, the aspects are not merely titles or ornaments. They are presences, ancient and bright, that wear mortal flesh the way a constellation might choose a single grain of sand. Curious about these aspects, allow me to explain it. High above the crowds of Runeterra, somewhere upon the jagged crown of Mount Targon, there exist celestial beings that do not live as mortals do, but also do not ignore the world entirely. They are shards of a higher order, fragments of the same distant magic that once brushed against Sharima in its age of ascension, choosing hosts among the faithful who climb the mountain. When an aspect descends, it settles into a willing body, blending its vast purpose with a single human will, so that one person may stride the world as both mortal and more than mortal, a living instrument of design. Targon itself, as a place and as a culture, has spent ages listening to the sky. In lonely temples carved from cold stone, in hidden chambers where starlight is focused like a blade, its priests and seers have whispered that the stars are not chaos, but a script. They believe that every shimmer of light, every slow drift of a constellation, is part of a pattern that justifies sacrifice, bold choices, even blood on the snow if it means the empire of heaven remains in balance. To them, magic is not a wild accident. It is a ladder, and they will climb it, no matter who trembles below. Here is the pattern interrupt, the unsettling turn. From their perspective, forging a crown of stolen star metal and fastening it upon Aurelion Sol's brow is not simple cruelty. It is strategy. If you could bind the dragon who made the first suns, would you not claim a weapon that could end wars before they begin, or erase a city with a single, absent breath? To the aspects, his bondage is a necessary theft, a way to seize the quill that writes fate itself. But to the dragon, there is no grand justification, only betrayal. He remembers the moment of trickery as a wound deeper than any spear, a quiet treason committed beneath the same stars he once loved. Now that we are clear with who holds the leash, now that we know the minds behind the mountain, we can return to him. Now that we know who holds the leash, we can watch how the dragon pulls against it again and again across the ages until the heavens themselves begin to strain. So, you all set? Good. Let us drift now from the mines upon the mountain to the one bound above it. In the quiet above Targon's icy crown, chains you cannot see tighten whenever the empire of stone and star priests whispers its need. They do not shout his name before crowds. They simply reach through that stolen crown of star metal. And the dragon listens, whether he wishes to or not. Oh, a new visitor from the woods. Welcome are you, a lost wanderer beneath this same sky, wondering how such distant lights could ever care for a single mortal city. Then join me, sit beside the fireplace, and allow me to explain how those lights have already been used as weapons. How an unwilling creator has been made to answer the prayers of a mountain. In ages when wars you will never see threatened Targon's designs, the aspects called upon Aurelion Sol as a general might call a warrior, but their battlefield was the night. With a thought pressed through the crown, they forced him to forge new stars as beacons, bright wounds of magic stitched into the dark, so their chosen could march, and their ascension rites could blaze with borrowed glory. He birthed sons to empower aspects of war and protection, each one a burning oath he never chose to swear. When ancient horrors stirred beyond the rim of known constellations, Targon's will turned him again. Entire patterns in the sky were dragged from their resting places, constellations rearranged like pieces on a board to seal away things that had no blood and no name. You can imagine it, can you not? A single curve of his vast body and galaxies bent, lines of light crossing and locking, a prison drawn not with stone walls, but with radiant arcs of stardust. Sometimes the command was simpler and crueler. A distant, void-born entity, older than any city, would rise from the black between worlds, and the aspects would compel one breath. Just one. Aurelion Sol exhaled, and a destructive flare swept across the stars. A tide of gold and white that scorched the intruder out of existence before it could even understand its death. No gore, no shattered empire, only a brief bright blossom in the dark, like a flower that never had a chance to bloom. Yet for him, these wonders are not triumphs. The brilliant novas you admire, the shimmering nebulae that drift like veils, the soft rivers of stardust that arch above Shurima and every other land. They are memories of obedience, not of freedom. Each radiant cloud is a record of a command fulfilled. Each perfect ring around a distant world is the mark of a leash pulled tight. So he began to resist in the only way he could. Even as he obeyed, he left small imperfections, tiny flaws in the patterns he wove. A star placed a fraction off its ordained path, a lattice of light with a hairline crack of imbalance. A sealed constellation with one sigil turned the slightest degree. To Targon, they were invisible. To him, they were seeds of future instability, little promises whispered to himself that one day the design might fracture. Now that we are clear with the scale of his forced feats, you can feel it, can you not? That slow tension building behind the sky. For every star he shapes under command, another weakness hides inside the work, waiting. And as ages pass and the mountain grows ever more certain of its power, the dragon is already planning what he will do when those tiny flaws finally, inevitably, begin to break. Now that we are clear with the fragility hidden inside every perfect pattern he was forced to weave, you can follow his gaze as it drifts away from the proud mountain and down toward the tiny lights below. Not the stars this time, but the brief, trembling sparks that move beneath them. To Aurelion Sol, a mortal life is not so different from a struck flint in a cavern of endless night. It flares, it glows with desperate brightness for a heartbeat of cosmic time, and then it gutters out, leaving almost nothing against the slow, patient glow of the stars he once shaped for joy. Empires that believe themselves eternal, a single warrior who believes his blood and courage will echo forever, even a city that sings with magic and crowds and firelight. All of them together are only a faint dusting of embers against the vast dark he calls home. He has watched worlds flower and crumble as easily as you might watch waves roll and break upon a shore. Civilizations rise in ordered lines of light, their empires blooming like constellations on the ground. Roads and towers tracing careful shapes that mirror the heavens. Then war or famine or some quiet, invisible failing pulls at their foundations, and those bright lines snap, scatter, and fade. After a while, only a few stubborn sparks remain, wandering among ruins that once swore they would outlast the sky. The dragon remembers them as you might remember a half-forgotten dream, a world of crystal spires that hummed back to his stars until their song went silent. A planet of bronze cities where ascension was not a rite, but a storm of raw celestial magic that burned almost every mortal away. A lonely moon where a single observatory turned its mirrors upward for 1,000 years, tracing his path until even that light went out. Most flickers vanish from his thoughts. A few leave thin, persistent echoes. Because some species, some fragile clusters of breathing sparks do something different. They lift their eyes instead of bowing their heads. They build observatories and temples, carve questions into stone, and dare to ask who placed the constellations above their Sharimar, their sea, their forest. Those that sing to the stars, that try to speak his forgotten language of light, draw the faintest tilt of his attention, like a dragon idly listening at the edge of a distant song. On Runeterra, he has seen this again and again. He has watched Targon's pilgrims claw their way up the mountain that wears his chains, their bodies frail, their resolve hard as the rock itself, each step a prayer thrown into the cold air. He has seen Shuriman sands glitter beneath his constellations, each grain catching a shard of his stolen radiance while the empire beneath rose, bled, and fell. He has watched Ionians meditate under his stars, tracing quiet patterns of magic in the air, breathing in time with constellations they do not know were forged in resentment. To him, these are movements of light in a field already crowded with far grander fires. He does not follow each story, each name, each birth and death. The warrior who dies nameless in a canyon, the priestess who whispers to the sky from a forgotten city wall, the child who points upward and asks what lives there, they pass through his awareness like sparks on the wind. Brief, beautiful sometimes, but brief. And yet, as he feels the tug of the crown, as he sculpts new stars for those who bound him, the question curls through the dark between his thoughts and yours. If you were such a being, chained by mortals who burn incense to the very prison they forged, would you still create beauty for them, patiently, endlessly? Or, with all that power coiled behind your breath, would you feel the slow, growing temptation to exhale once, deeply, and snuff out their sky? Somewhere far above Runeterra, as another forced constellation blooms into being, the dragon's answer begins to take shape. And when you hear what he intends to do with those flickers in the dark, you may never look at the night the same way again. So, as that unwilling constellation settles into place above the sleeping world, you might imagine the story is over, that the dragon simply obeys and the sky quietly fills. But eternity does not pass so simply for a celestial mind, and Aurelion Sol does not forget the moment the crown first bit into his scales. In the ages that follow, whole empires rise and fall beneath him like sparks in a wind. stars he birthed before Shurima had a name begin to dim. Their once bright fire folding inward, their light thinning to a tired whisper. He remembers each one. Time, for you, is a river. For him, it is a still lake, perfectly reflective, every memory of flame and betrayal resting on its surface, never sinking, never lost. You might ask, welcome are you a lost wanderer in such a vast night? How does resentment survive when even suns grow cold? Allow me to explain. At first, there is only shock, a stunned disbelief that lesser beings, mortals bound to a single fragile world, could bind the dragon who painted their heavens. That shock curdles into a roaring anger, bright and wild, like a newborn star flaring against the dark. Yet rage, left to burn unchecked, consumes itself. His does not. It cools, hardens, settles into something far more enduring, a slow, calculating hatred that matches the pace of galaxies. Across millennia, the Crown's command still scrapes against his thoughts with the same sharpness as the first day. It never loosens, but he learns to lean against it. At first, only for a heartbeat longer than he should, when the aspects of Targon whisper for a new pattern, a new banner of light above their holy city. A star that should blaze in the east is placed a fraction lower. A trail of silver dust is curved a little too sharply, its arc no longer quite the prophecy they intended. Then join me, sit beside the fireplace in your mind, and picture this: an empire on another world, guided for generations by a constellation that Aurelion Sol was forced to craft. One night he delays just slightly. A season of storms arrives early, crops fail. A war between neighboring cities begins 3 years before the Targonian seers predicted. To them, it is chaos. To him, it is a single, quiet nudge. Now that we are clear with how patient his defiance becomes, you can see how the balance shifts. As they study the heavens to read his work, he studies them. He watches Targon's cycles of rise and fall, the way each new aspect leans upon the magic stolen from his blood and breath. He notes how their power waxes when the Crown's light is strongest, how it wanes when he withholds the smallest fraction of his will. The tone of the universe in these long ages is soft and steady, like a low rumble beneath distant clouds. Nothing explodes. No worlds are yet torn apart. But in the quiet between commands, a dragon is learning his captors, testing his chains, and waiting for the one moment when that buried thunder will finally be allowed to break the loud sky open. That buried thunder waits, and for a long while, the universe pretends not to hear it. You sit there by the quiet crackle of the fire, and the night outside feels still, as if the stars themselves are listening. Then, almost in a whisper, however, not everything goes the way Targon intends. The long, static balance they have forced upon the heavens begins to tremble, not with a single shattering blow, but with a slow, creeping strain that spreads from age to age. Allow me to explain how such strain begins. On Mount Targon, new aspects awaken and old ones fade. Each rebirth a slight miscalculation in the perfect equation the aspects believe they have written. The crown of star metal, forged to hold a universe-sized will, is asked to channel new wars, new crusades, new experiments in mortal destiny. Every time an aspect of war rallies an empire, every time an aspect of justice descends into a city drenched in blood, the crown must lean on Aurelion Sol's power once more, and its bindings thin like metal worked too often in the forge. Far beyond Runeterra, other celestials drift in their own designs. They are not blind to what has been done to the dragon that once shaped their firmament. Some watch with cold indifference, deciding that one warrior of the stars enslaved is a small price for ordered constellations. Others, quieter and rarer, feel a subtle disapproval, a disharmony in the song of creation that will not resolve. And a few, distant and patient, see opportunity in a wounded titan held on a leash, wondering what might be taken or freed when that leash finally snaps. Down below, on the little world that started this betrayal, the pattern of history begins to twist. Empires rise from desert and forest, like Shurima once did, and they do not always kneel when Targon expects. A city defies an oracle. A mortal king rejects a prophecy. Wars of ascension and rebellion spill magic across the sky, tearing open brief, violent wounds in reality. Each catastrophe demands intervention from above, and so, again and again, the aspects reach for their unwilling star forger. You can almost see it if you close your eyes for a moment. Aurelion Sol dragged from one horizon to another, forced to mend a broken firmament here, to birth a guiding star there, to scorch a battlefield so that one chosen warrior survives. With each command, the crown tightens. With each exhausted return to the void between tasks, it loosens, just a fraction. Is it any wonder that the cracks begin as something felt rather than seen? On certain nights when no prayer rises from Targon and no empire clamours for omens, there is a pause. In that pause, the dragon stretches his awareness and feels, for the first time in an age, the faintest slack in his chains. It is not freedom, not yet. But in that breath of loosened metal, he discovers something dangerous, the space to imagine what he might do with even a single moment that belongs to him alone. Now that we are clear with how the firmament itself starts to strain, we can follow that first imagined moment as it grows into something the aspects never truly prepared for. In the hush that follows that first imagined rebellion, the sky over Runeterra does something very small and very strange. A familiar constellation shifts by the width of a fingertip, a hunter's spear bending a fraction, a serpent's coil loosening, and, far above the sleeping empire and every quiet city, a few new pinpricks of light bloom where there should be only dark. Oh, a new visitor from the woods. You look up with them, even if you are only listening, and the night feels restless like a great creature turning in its sleep. Welcome are you, a lost wanderer beneath this uneasy firmament, wondering why the stars refuse to stay where stories say they belong. Then join me, sit beside the fireplace, and let your thoughts drift upward as the heavens begin to move. Across the curve of the world, sailors on distant seas trace their trusted guides, only to watch those guiding lamps dim, slide, and vanish. The sea is calm, yet the crews whisper of wrong tides and wrong moons as faint streaks of falling light sketch pale scars across the darkness. In the temples of Targon, priests in layered robes raise their voices in hurried chants, hands lifted toward a sky they believe they command, while above their mountain, the constellations they named for their own ascension quietly disobey. Allow me to explain what your mortal eyes cannot see. Far beyond Runeterra's thin blue veil, in regions of space where no city or crowd will ever stand, Aurelion Sol is being compelled to touch his own creations with a different kind of breath. Stars he once shaped with patient pride are pressed inward, folded upon themselves until their shining skins crumple and their hearts condense into dense, invisible remnants. Their gravity does not roar. It leans, it tugs, it pulls at the fabric of reality like a constant, unseen hand. Nearby worlds feel this new weight. Oceans rise too far along unfamiliar shores, tides stretching as though drawn by a second, harsher moon. Skies are washed, in light that is too sharp, colors turning thin and metallic, as though the air itself has been scraped. Auroras unfurl across the heavens in slow, bruised ribbons, violet and deep blue and sickly green, painting borders of quiet harm over forests, deserts and the last snowfields of Shurima's forgotten cousins. On the ground, mages pause mid-incantation and feel their magic twist, runes bending like reeds in a sudden wind as stellar alignments slip into new, uneasy patterns. A battle-weary warrior looks up from the blood and dust of some small border skirmish, seeing nothing but a strange shimmer at the edge of the clouds, never knowing that distant suns are being unmade above his fleeting war. For Aurelion Sol, it is all distant, and yet unbearably close. Each star that cracks inward is a tug in his chest, a quiet ache that does not fade. Each forced act of destruction coils another layer of resentment around a heart that once beat only with radiant curiosity. Now that we are clear with how even gentle light can be turned into a weapon, we can follow that tightening coil and see what happens when a creator begins to imagine unmaking more than just his stars. That tightening coil in the dragon's chest does not stay trapped in the cold between stars. It ripples outward, down, until it brushes the fragile world you know. You all set. Then join me, sit beside the fireplace and listen as that distant anger writes itself across Runeterra's sky. Far to the south, where the desert once fed an empire of golden monuments, a Shuriman caravan crawls over dunes that still remember ascension. The night is their shield from the sun's cruelty, and for generations the same faithful stars have guided their wheels between half-buried obelisks and forgotten Shurima tombs. Tonight, though, a murmur moves through the crowds as a familiar pattern above them flickers, stretches, and simply blinks out. A guiding serpent of light, once used by every traveling warrior and merchant, unthreads itself into scattered sparks. Camels snort, children clutch at robes, and old map readers taste dust and fear as they lift shaking hands toward a sky that no longer keeps its promises. In distant Ionia, where magic runs in quiet rivers beneath moss and stone, an ancient monastery sits upon a cliff wreathed in cloud. The monks there do not watch the heavens with their eyes alone. They listen. Tonight, as you picture yourself among them, kneeling on cool wooden floors, the ley lines hum with a low, discordant tremor. Constellations overhead swell, collapse, and reform in new, sharp-edged shapes, and each shift plucks at the threads of the land. Bells chime without hands, paper charms flutter as if in a storm, and the abbot whispers that some unseen hand is dragging the sky across the world like a net. To the west, near the proud walls of a Demacian city, a patrol rides its border in orderly ranks, armor pale in the moonlight. These are trained warriors raised on tales of Darkin, of blood and steel and honorable defense against magic. Yet even their discipline frays when strange curtains of color begin to roll over the horizon, silent waves of starlight twisting like wounded banners. Squires cross themselves, veterans mutter about Noxian sorcery, and somewhere a commander quietly orders the alarm bells readied, as if steel could defend against a sky that has chosen to move. Across Runeterra, mortals respond the only way they know. In Targon's shadowed villages, offerings pile at temple steps, fruit and coins and tiny carved effigies left beneath statues of aspects who do not answer. In Shuriman ruins, priests in tattered gold press their brows to cracked stone and whisper old stories to constellations that no longer match their carved ceilings. In Piltover observatories, scholars hunch over trembling candlelight, redrawing star maps again and again as lines refuse to stay where ink insists they belong. Some blame their own gods for this night of unanswered prayers. Some mutter that distant enemies have found a new weapon, a magic that stains the sky itself. A few, weary and practical, simply accept that the world is changing once more as empires rise and fall and cities burn and rebuild in endless rhythm. Almost none imagine that far above, beyond their highest towers and their tallest mountain shrines, a single dragon's reluctant hand is tracing these new scars of light. Yet here and there, sensitive souls feel more. A blind seer in Noxus shudders as she tastes ash on the wind and says, "The heavens feel angry." A star reader on the coasts of Bilgewater wakes from trance with tears on his face, speaking of a presence that feels tired and terribly, terribly old. High on Mount Targon, a lone acolyte looks up and, for a heartbeat, senses not comfort but irritation, gazing back. Oh, a new visitor from the woods. Welcome are you, a lost wanderer among these shifting constellations. Allow me to explain what they feel tonight. The stars no longer seem like distant, gentle lanterns pinned in velvet. They feel like watchful eyes, narrowed in quiet, cosmic displeasure. And if eyes can narrow, can they not also close or turn away entirely? And if eyes can narrow, can they not also close or turn away entirely? High above the sleeping empire and every quiet city, there is one place that refuses to look away. On the mountain of Targon, where the air is thin and sharp as broken glass, the priests and the aspects gather in their highest chambers, surrounded by hanging star maps and cold, disciplined candlelight that burns without flicker. The sky trembles, and so they sit awake while the rest of the world dreams. You can almost see them if you let your mind drift there for a moment. Robes whispering over stone, fingers stained with old ink, they pore over shifting constellations traced in gold and chalk, drawing new lines between stars that should have been fixed forever. Is this pattern a warning, they wonder, or an opening? Is this sudden flare of distant, wounded light the work of some rival power, or the first quiet blow of an unseen war? Oh, a new visitor from the woods. Welcome are you, a lost wanderer beneath this uneasy sky. Then join me, sit beside the fireplace and look with them for a while. The aspects murmur in voices that once commanded ascension in distant Sharima, debating whether these changes are random tremors or deliberate acts of magic. They remember void rifts, darkened blades, worlds that bled themselves dry under careless gods, and yet what they see now does not quite match any old wound. Allow me to explain what they finally accept in those echoing halls. The source is not some distant, hostile star king or invading god, not a new warrior empire rising beyond their sight. The origin of the instability lies within their own greatest treasure, their most terrible secret, the dragon whose breath once forged suns, the captive architect of the very constellations they are measuring. The crown of stolen star metal still rests upon his brow, but his obedience no longer flows as smoothly as it did when the chains were new. So they decide to tighten their grip. New rituals are written in blood and starlight to reinforce the crown, chanted in circles that face every corner of the heavens. Harsher commands are spoken, each word a bar hammered across a cosmic cage. Some aspects even propose to narrow his sight, to veil certain regions of space from his awareness, as if they can blind a being made of radiant, living constellations. Can you imagine trying to hide the sea from the ocean itself? Now that we are clear with their fear, you can feel how each act of control becomes an act of provocation. The more they squeeze, the more the great dragon feels the pressure, not as iron on scale, but as insult on ancient pride. One day, when he finally moves against his captors, the balance they cling to will not be restored. It will shatter, and the backlash will not simply scorch a single city or empire. It will roar across the sky itself, on a scale even Targon, staring so intently upward, has never truly dared to imagine. The balance they cling to, you remember, is already cracking. In that high, thin air above Targon, their rituals grind on, but far beyond their mountain, in the quiet gulf between galaxies, his true rebellion does not roar. It whispers, it drifts, it coils. In the dark between suns, Aurelion Sol's mind spreads like a vast, star-filled ocean, and you may imagine yourself hovering at its surface, listening. Thoughts there do not dart like mortal impulses in a crowded city street. They move slowly with the weight of drifting continents, each idea a continent of fire and memory. Within that ocean, currents of attention have once wandered in 1,000 directions, chasing the delight of a newborn star or the delicate music of a forming nebula. Now, one current runs steady and unbroken, deep beneath the glittering waves. It moves toward a single shore. Freedom. Oh, a new visitor from the woods, if you peer down into that cosmic sea, you will not find wild rage thrashing against its bounds. Eternity has taught this dragon patience, the way long deserts taught Shurima's old warriors to march by the rhythm of the sun rather than the beat of their own blood. He does not hurl himself against the crown's invisible hooks. Instead, he studies them. Every tug of Targon's will along that circlet of star metal is traced, weighed, compared, like a scholar of an empire poring over forbidden scripts, feeling for the one, imperfect rune. Welcome, are you a lost wanderer? Then join me, sit beside the fireplace, and allow me to explain how subtle rebellion can be when waged by a mind that has watched galaxies freeze and fall. Each command that reaches him from the mountain is obeyed, yes, but never quite as they intend. A star is placed a fraction off its ordained axis, so that in 10,000 years, its light will bend a different path. A constellation is drawn with quiet asymmetry, its lines of radiant magic capable of being rethreaded later into a sigil of unbinding instead of worship. Here and there, as he forges or guides, he withholds. A reservoir of stellar power is left unspent, hidden in a forgotten corner of the void, like a weapon buried beneath an abandoned city wall, waiting for the right siege. Now that we are clear with his careful work in the heavens, you might notice that his gaze falls more often upon Runeterra itself. Not with affection, with calculation. He watches mortals climb Targon's slopes and fall back in broken crowds of pilgrims. He watches a lone warrior raise a spear against the sky, or a quiet mage in some distant city trace unfamiliar constellations into a book and whisper of omens. Among these fragile sparks, he seeks not friends, but fractures. Who among them might, in ignorance or defiance, chip away at the rituals that bind him? Who might call upon the wrong star at the perfect moment? So the ocean of his mind grows stiller and also more intent. Every altered orbit, every hidden store of power, every watching, waiting mortal becomes part of an unseen pattern. When a being who can erase suns with a thought finally turns the full gravity of his attention upon his own chains, what kind of night will dawn over the world that betrayed him? And will anyone on that small, bright sphere recognize the sky as it burns into something new? When a night like that finally arrives, you will feel it before you see it. A pressure in the dark, like a held breath at the edge of the world. Oh, a new visitor from the woods. Welcome, are you a lost wanderer? Then join me, sit beside the fireplace, and let us drift together toward that distant, trembling moment when his chains, at last, begin to fail. You all set? Good. Allow me to explain how such an ending, or perhaps a beginning, might unfold. Perhaps it starts with a single flaw in the crown of star metal, a hairline fracture born from ages of quiet defiance. Perhaps a Targonian ritual reaches too far, one more desperate grasp for borrowed magic that pulls on the dragon one time too many. Or perhaps some older, stranger force in the void gives the bindings the slightest, cruelest nudge. Whatever the cause, there is a second where the universe seems to hesitate. In that second, the sky over Runeterra changes. Constellations that have watched Shurima, Demacia, and every distant city since the First Empire rose begin to twist. Lines of light you thought were eternal snap and rejoin in unfamiliar angles, like a wounded warrior setting his own broken bones. Whole patterns go dark at once, as if someone has laid a hand across the heavens, while others flare to life in sudden, blinding cascades, forming new shapes that no priest of Targon ever named. Over mountain and desert, over blood-soaked battlefields and sleeping crowds, the night becomes a moving tapestry of unsteady stars. Above the peak of Targon itself, the firmament might ripple, a vast dragon's silhouette folding out of the void, so immense that the proud mountain looks suddenly small, like a shard of stone left over from some forgotten ascension. His revenge would not be a crude storm of fire, but something slower, more deliberate. Imagine ranges of mountains swallowed by velvety shadow as the stars that once crowned them wink out, one by one. Imagine high temples waking to find their guiding, constellations stripped away, their sacred patterns erased, walls and statues of radiant aspect standing under a blank, indifferent sky. The peak that thought it had mastered a creator would find itself dwarfed, its outline lost beneath coils of living starlight as Aurelion Sol unfurls to his full, unbound form. Yet Runeterra would only feel the first tremor. When a being who once breathed suns into existence moves freely again, the entire universe must shift to make room. Old works he shaped in joy might be lifted, turned and set along new paths, their orbits redirected like thoughts reconsidered. Worlds and galaxies forged under duress, under the insult of that crown, may be unmade or gently folded into something else, as if he were erasing the signatures of his own humiliation. And still, within all that fury, there would be beauty. Even in anger, he is an artist of the cosmos. The skies he paints in his wake might be terrible, but they would be breathtaking. Rivers of newborn, stars spilling across the void. Constellations that tell no Targonian story at all, but instead whisper of freedom, of weariness, of a creator finally choosing his own design. Now that we are clear with this imagined tomorrow, you might wonder, if such a dragon remade the night itself, would anyone beneath those altered heavens be able to sleep again? Or would they simply lie awake, watching the universe learn how to breathe on its own once more? So let us breathe again, a little more slowly now, and drift back along the path we have traced together, as if we were lying on our backs beneath that altered sky, watching the universe learn to breathe on its own. In the quiet of this room, with the night pressing gently at the open window, you first listened as a single presence stirred in the dark, before all stories, before any empire or city or warrior had ever been named. There, in that first vast silence, Aurelion Sol uncoiled. A dragon older than any ascension rite, older than Shurima's desert winds, stretched his golden length across a universe that had not yet learned the meaning of light, and with a casual exhale of magic and will, he seeded the void with stars. You followed him as he painted whole currents of starlight, as if the crowds of suns were only bright embers shaken from his mane. From those early ages of effortless creation, we wandered to the lonely pride that grew in his heart, the certainty that no mortal, no god, No distant city could ever touch his majesty. He swept past worlds and never slowed, amused by their brief sparks of blood and history. And when he turned his gaze toward Runeterra, he traced its night as a passing amusement, laying constellations above Mount Targon like jewelry tossed onto dark velvet. Yet that glittering mountain was not an accident, and its summit called to him. You remember his descent, do you not? The way we pictured his vast body folding closer and closer to that single peak, drawn by the shining lure of star metal that should have answered only to him. Upon that height, betrayal waited in the shape of a crown, forged from his own stolen work, set upon his brow by smiling aspects who spoke softly and bound him absolutely. From then, ages passed like slow, grinding stones. We watched him labor as a prisoner, forced to breathe new stars at another's command, to shift constellations into rigid patterns that served Targon's designs, to collapse radiant, suns into hungry wounds in the sky when war demanded it. Every curve of the heavens became a record of his servitude, each careful arc of light a chain link hammered into place above Runeterra. But chains, even celestial ones, can fray. Over long cycles, his view of mortals began to change. At first, they were only dust motes around a forge, but as he studied their tiny defiance, their fragile empires rising and falling beneath the same constellations he arranged, something in his resentment sharpened. He watched Targon tighten its grip, drawing more power from his unwilling labor, and in answer, he began to resist in the only way he safely could. We traced those quiet acts of rebellion together. A star nudged a fraction off its ordained line, a constellation delayed in its season, an omen softened so that a destined war might falter. Each misalignment was a whispered refusal, a reminder that inside the obedient pattern, the Creator still dreamed of freedom. Welcome are you a lost wanderer, listening to such a vast story and wondering if these tiny shifts could ever matter. Then join me, sit beside the fireplace, at least in your thoughts, and let the details blur at the edges. You do not need to hold every name, every date, every distant clash of aspects and dragon. Allow me to explain that this story can settle like stardust in the back of your mind. What remains is simple and soft. Every night sky in this lore, every river of stars above any battlefield of blood or magic, was drawn by a dragon who longs to be unbound. Now that we are clear with this gentle truth, you may let your eyes grow heavy, knowing that somewhere far beyond the roof above you, a weary creator still traces the heavens, and somewhere in those slow, gliding motions, he is quietly preparing for the moment when his own chains finally break. And as that thought drifts like a last spark across your mind, the vast sky of Runeterra slowly dims behind your closed eyes, and the room around you comes back into gentle focus somewhere far above. Crowns and empires and shattered cities. The dragon still coils among his stars, but here, in this small, quiet place, it is only you, the soft air and the slow rhythm of your breathing. You may notice the faintest sound in the distance, perhaps the hush of a night wind or a muted step in the hallway, and then the familiar weight of your own pillow beneath your head, steady cool or warm against your skin. A new visitor from the woods if you still listen at the edge of sleep. Welcome. Are you a lost wanderer? Then join me, sit beside the fireplace, not in a crowded city of Shurima this time, but here in the hush of your own room, where the only crowds are passing thoughts, where every breath you take rises and falls like a tiny tide, mirroring faraway constellations being born and fading again up there. Above the world of Runeterra, every constellation is a memory of his work, a story etched in light. Some stars were shaped in joy when he first learned to play with the raw magic of creation. Others were forged in quiet resentment when the crown of stolen star metal pressed tighter around his brow. Each pattern in the sky is like a scar across a warrior's armor, some from proud battles, some from betrayal, all of them glowing with the stubborn radiance of a dragon who once believed he could never be bound. Allow me to explain a soft truth before sleep takes you even the most powerful beings in any story. Even a cosmic dragon who crafts suns as easily as mortals, spill blood in war can be trapped. Their paths to freedom are rarely loud. They are long and winding, filled with patient resistance and silent promises rather than constant roaring rebellion. Aurelion Sol's revenge will not be a single shout. It will be the slow unweaving of chains, star by star, breath by breath, until the empire of Targon finally realizes what it dared to bind when you wake or when you next return. You may share which champion's lore you wish to drift through, perhaps another ascended warrior from Shurima, or a quiet mage hidden in some distant city. Or if you prefer, tell me your favorite Aurelion Sol line and how you imagine his final answer to those who stole his crown. Does he darken their sky or remake it brighter without them, for now? You do not need to think about cosmic wars, broken crowns, or fallen empires only. About rest, only about breathing in and out as slowly as a dragon, shaping a new star in the dark, somewhere beyond your ceiling. He is still drawing those stars, one slow, shining breath at a time. And as you sink into sleep, you may feel that the next light he kindles in the black is already waiting for you just beyond the edge of this dream.